Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Robert Allen, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. We warmly welcome the family of Pilot Officer Neil Howard Denyer, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome Group Captain Ernie Walsh, Air Force Association, ACT President. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Those requiring a seat, please do. The Australian Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and for operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Pilot Officer Neil Howard Denyer. Neil Denyer was born in August 1921, one of two children born to Hurtle and Ruby Denyer of Temora, New South Wales. Young Neil attended high school at Temora and Orange, where he excelled academically and enjoyed photography and had a wide circle of friends. The family of the land led Hurtle and Ruby to take up a property at Mundaroo near Tumbarumba in 1939. There, Neil grazed sheep with his father and paraded part-time with the 1st Light Horse Regiment in the Citizens Military Forces. Neil enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force Reserve at Wagga Wagga in March 1941 and was called up for the Citizens Air Force 6 months later. He spent 3 months carrying out initial training at Summers in Victoria, then went on to train as an air observer under the auspice of the Empire Air Training Scheme. His role as part of a bomber aircrew was to navigate the aircraft to the target area and release the payload of bombs onto the designated targets. His training in Australia consisted of postings at the Air Aviation School at Mount Gambier, the Bombing and Gunnery School at Evans Head, and an astronavigation course at Parkes in New South Wales. Neil sailed for England in November 1942 and was posted to the No. 27 Operational Training Unit at Lichfield, Staffordshire, which prepared aircrew for service in the heavy bombers being operated by Bomber Command. These were the first Vickers Wellington, then the Hanley Page Halifax. Whilst at Lichfield, Neil teamed up with a 7-man aircrew, 5 of whom were Australians, then carried out further training on the 4-engine Avro Lancaster bomber at a heavy conversion unit. Neil and his crew were then posted to No. 103 Squadron RAF at Elsham Wolds in Lincolnshire in April 1943. From there, they carried out their first operational sortie over Nazi-occupied Europe. On the night of the 4th of May 1943, Neil's Lancaster crew was one of 596 aircraft that bombed the German city of Dortmund. Their aircraft was spotted by searchlights and subjected to heavy flak, but was able to drop its bombs and then make it back to Elsham Wood. After 4 operational sorties with No. 103 Squadron, Neil and his crew volunteered service with the Pathfinder Force, an elite unit of Bomber Command that flew ahead of the main force bombers to mark the targets. Posted to No. 156 Squadron at RAF Warboys, Neil's crew quickly clocked up their tally of operational sorties, striking targets in the heartland of industrial Germany at the height of the Battle of the Ruhr. They also participated in historical raids on Hamburg and the V2 rocket facility at Peenemünde in July and August 1943. Towards the end of 1943, RAF Bomber Command set about preparing a major aerial offensive on the German capital of Berlin. This was a long and treacherous journey to fly in the bomber stream at night across Nazi-occupied Europe, and the crew faced a network of searchlights, flak belts and night fighters over the target areas. Neil's first raid on Berlin took place on the evening of the 23rd of August 1943. He recorded in his flight log they encountered moderate flak and searchlights, but there were numerous fighters over the city and on the returning journey home. 11 days later, on the 3rd of September 1943, Neil and his crew failed to return from their next operational sortie over Berlin. Their Lancaster bomber, R for Robert, was last heard from after taking off from RAF Warboys just before 8 p.m. As air crews had to maintain radio silence, it was unclear at what point during the raid that their aircraft had disappeared. It was one of 22 aircraft that failed to return home. The wife of Arthur Roberts' pilot, Flying Officer Michael Shanahan, wrote to Neil's parents expressing her sympathy at this anxious time. I want to say I have every hope that Michael and all the crew are safe and we will hear from them as prisoners of war soon. I have a tiny daughter, just 1 year and 9 months old, and I'm sure her daddy will come back to us. Do try and feel the same way about Neil. It does help a little. No further official news emerged about what may have happened to the men. In April 1944, Neil's parents were informed that he and the 6 other crewmen had died during the raid on Berlin. Aged 22 at the time, Neil and the other crew members of the Lancaster, Juliet Alpha 861, have no known grave. Their names appear on the Runnymede Air Forces Memorial in Surrey, England, which lists over 20,000 British and Dominion airmen and women who died whilst on operations during the Second World War, flying from bases in the United Kingdom and the North West Europe area. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left amongst more than 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories and service of sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Pilot Officer Neil Howard Denyer, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has in his last moments. Well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a pleasant evening. Thank you.